I think the reason breakups are so powerful is because we are at that place of, I don't care what I have to do. I just don't want to feel this way anymore. That's a really powerful place to be in. And I think
Mhm.
that is why breakups can provide so much transformation because
Oh,
we're
yeah.
a sponge. Hey, I will try anything. I just
Right.
don't want to be in this pain anymore.
If you are going through a really challenging, traumatic, demoralizing breakup or divorce, I know that you have so many burning questions on your mind that are worthy of being addressed. So things like, how long is this going to take for me? How long am I going to keep feeling this way before I start to mend, right? When am I going to feel like myself again? You might be grappling with like, how does the grieving process work even for this kind of loss? You might be struggling with how to navigate some particularly challenging moments related to like anniversaries of important things that happened in the relationship, or even how to navigate holidays when you're going through a breakup or divorce can be tough ones. But also, lastly, even questions like, how do I know if I'm moving forward? What does healing look like? These are oftentimes the most burning questions on everyone's mind as they're going through what you're going through. And that's why on today's episode, I was so excited to invite my friend Kendra Allen, who is the podcast host of Breakup Bestie, and also the celebrated book author, a fellow expert in these kinds of matters of the heart. I was so excited just to bring her voice into this conversation and share her perspective with you. So, Kendra, thank you for being here and for doing this with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay.
I am excited to have a little collaboration with us. I know so many of our ideas are very lined up. I loved our conversation on my show, so very excited
Yay.
to be on here.
That was so fun. I had the best time talking with you. So let's just roll right into this. And in order just to orient our listeners and our viewers into who you are and where your perspective comes from, I happen to know that you have a very powerful story related to your own journey of healing. And I think that it's so helpful for us, even just as a culture, to be able to talk about these stories openly, because otherwise we can fall into so much shame, right? What is wrong with me that I am having such a bad experience? Like, do other people feel this way? And so that's why I always love every opportunity to just bring other people's stories into the air. Would you mind sharing yours?
Yeah, no, and I mean, I believe that so much that
Mm-hmm.
hearing I can remember very specific times where I heard someone share a part of my story that I thought I would take to the grave, and
Mm.
hearing them say it instantly healed something in me. So I think it's so important to share our stories. But to go back, I'd say I started drinking pretty early on in my teenage years. And it
Mm.
honestly, for better or for worse, became problematic pretty quickly. And I say for better because I feel really grateful that I hit my bottom with alcohol and drugs young. I got sober when I was 21.
Amazing.
And so it's been almost 12 years now. And that's a huge part of my story. Whether or not that's an easy connection to make between getting sober and going through a breakup, I find it very connected. But when I got sober, I remember believing that, okay, now that this problem is over with, I'll be able to find a good relationship. I had been in an abusive relationship
Mm.
prior to getting
Mm-hmm.
sober, and I thought it would solve all my problems, but what I realized, it was actually just the beginning of my healing journey. I
Mm.
had to take away that very troubling and problematic Band-Aid, and then I had to get to what was underneath. And so I still struggled in relationships the first few
Mm-hmm.
years into my sobriety, and then after a pattern that I didn't see until the very end, I kept finding myself in non-committal situationships, and finally by the third one in a matter of a couple years, I looked up and thought, okay, I think it's me. I think there's just something to who I'm attracting and what kind of
Yeah.
relationships I'm finding myself in. And
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually worked through my relationship history. I've never made these different connections, and I've never looked at it under the microscope that, say, I looked at my sobriety under. So I
Mm,
took a year after I had about 3 years sober. I took a year and really dove into me as it relates to relationships.
mm,
And I went through a really hard breakup. That's what sparked it all. And I became the breakup bestie to my friends,
yeah.
and then started writing about it and started sharing about it. And that's where Breakup Bestie came from. And I do think a powerful thing that I provide is I'm very big on validating feelings, because I
Mhm.
truly don't think breakups get the justice that they deserve. They're one of the most difficult things we go through, and I remember thinking there's not enough help in this area.
Yeah.
And so I feel really proud to be one of the people that has been adding resources to this space for since 2017 for me with my Instagram.
Yeah. That is so awesome. And I know we are definitely on the same mission. And I just want to share, like you, I stumbled into an addiction early. It wasn't alcohol, it was cigarettes, interestingly. But boy, we can wallpaper over so much stuff with various substances, right? And that also going through my own traumatic breakup, just that was the most precious thing to me too, was this experience of being validated. Like for somebody else to say, what you're going through is so real and it is so awful. And I see that. It meant so much to me at the time because I really felt like there must be something so wrong with me that this was happening. And just to know that these experiences are fairly universal, that even if we're
Mhm.
not talking about them, people experience this. And also that there is a way forward. I think that we can't stay here. And I love that's part of your message too. Would you be willing to tell us just a little bit about your breakup recovery journey and how that kind of
Yeah.
influenced your mission and your message?
Yeah, yeah. So I think my first step was taking away the crutches
Mm,
almost of getting down to me. And I think not realizing it, but I had used so many different things to take away from that recovery prior, and realizing, okay, this is up to me, which is scary, but I also think it's very powerful
mm,
because I have the power to heal from this. For me, a big part of my journey was just getting really honest with myself about my past relationships. And I know this looks different for everyone, but for me, I had gone through this abusive relationship, and it had been years, and I hadn't been able to let this person go. And for me, I had to own my part in certain parts of the relationship. I had to take away the idea that I just had bad luck, or that the universe hated me
mm-hmm.
and kept giving
Mm,
me bad relationships. I had to look at what was my part in
yeah,
this and how can I change moving forward. That was a really big part for
yeah.
me.
Mm,
And it wasn't to victim blame myself in the abusive relationship. It was just to
no,
say, okay, I stayed in this well past the point where I realized I should have walked away.
yeah.
And for me, with the non-committal relationships, I got to a place where I saw, I don't feel like I'm commitment material. So
Mm,
I'm attracting people who don't want to commit to me. And
yeah.
so if I can change how I see myself, I can change the kind of people that I attract. So that
Mm-hmm.
was a big part. And then I'd say the other part was allowing, this sounds so counterintuitive, improving my relationship with women
Mm.
and friendships dramatically improved my ability to have a relationship with myself, and then have romantic relationships.
Oh my goodness. Okay, now I'm curious. Can you tell us just a
Yeah.
little bit more about what you learned through that process about just the relationship between friendships and your romantic wellness, I guess we should say. Tell me more.
Yeah. I think I really had a skewed perception of what intimacy was, and if
Mm-hmm.
I'm being totally honest, it was very much, like, sexuality driven,
Yeah.
where I thought to be intimate with someone just
Mm-hmm.
meant the physical part of it. I
Right.
had to learn what it was like to really show myself, and to be at a point where, 'cause when they say you go on dates, just be yourself. But if you don't know who you are, which that was me, How could I do that? So I
Yeah.
needed to have a safe space to be myself.
Mhm.
And I found that through female friendships and
Yeah.
really investing in those
Yeah.
friendships, not just, I don't know. So I really took that year and just had so much fun with my friends and had these like really deep, meaningful connections with them. We took trips together. I made new friends. Some friends fell away, but
Mhm.
I really took a year and just had the year of girlfriends. And that allowed me to learn how to be myself. And then
Yeah.
when I started dating again, I felt comfortable because I had practiced it so many times
Mhm.
and I knew that my friends loved me for me. They weren't
Yeah.
getting physical intimacy from me
Mhm.
like I thought people needed, and they still loved me and wanted to be around me. So it was a very powerful experience for me in that
Yeah.
regard.
This is so cool and also I think so important, and I'm feeling incredibly grateful that we are talking about this, Kendra, because I think what you're describing is true and also total path of not just healing, but really growth that I think can happen on the other side of a relationship loss when you do it really well. Because I think that many times, at least in my experience as a therapist, as a coach, people coming in the door, the primary motivation is to not feel bad anymore. Like they are very specifically in heartbreak over the loss of a specific person, and they are thinking about their ex all the time. They're ruminating about the relationship. They're having all of these bad feelings, shame, and their self confidence has been bruised, and also a lot of fear. Am I ever going to find somebody? But it's like very focused on the relationship piece. And so I know that we have so much work to do, as I think we talked about on your podcast. Like there are so many of these stages of healing and recovery, but like when people give themselves permission to go through this whole process, but and not just have the goal to be over this one specific person, but have the goal be so much more profound, which is, what do I need to take a look at in terms of my big picture patterns, and what do I need to learn from this experience? How do I need to grow from that experience? And then doing what you did, which is all of the work to make that happen. You transformed yourself through that year after your breakup. You became a different person. It wasn't just getting over that whatever guy that we probably can't remember his name about anymore. It was like, who am I? What do I want? And how does my own self development play into that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I really learned that through getting sober is
Yeah.
they call it in the recovery community the gift of desperation.
Right. I
And
can relate to that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's as self-motivated as some of us may like to believe we
Yeah.
are. It's hard to do the work. It's
Yeah.
hard to look at ourselves. It's hard to take the time to write and
Hmm.
to talk through things with other people. It's so much easier to not do that. So, I think the reason breakups are so powerful is because we are at that place of I don't care what I have to do. I just don't want to feel this way anymore. That's a really powerful place to be in. And I think
Hmm.
that is why breakups can provide so much transformation because
Oh,
we're
yeah.
a sponge. Hey, I will try anything. I just
Right.
don't want to be in this pain anymore. So I will look at my past and I will admit to my mistakes and
Hmm.
all of that.
Definitely. It's an entry point into very profound growth if you are receptive to that. But and also, though, I do want to highlight something that you said, because I think that to people who are in this place, especially the early stages where they're just feeling so raw, rejected, defeated, have so many big, dark feelings, that I think it can be hard for them sometimes to hear this message in a way that feels helpful and constructive. I think it can be interpreted, and understandably, in this place of fragility, meaning, oh, it was my fault. Because I think that's like their worst fear anyway. Like, I am fundamentally unlovable. I did all these things wrong. Nobody will ever love me, like that kind of thing. And that to move into a mindset of growth and what can I work on, I think it can feel very threatening. Oh, that is
And
true. And so,
infuriating in some ways.
yeah. So what advice would you give to people who are struggling with that, to how to do the work step by step over time with the goal of achieving bigger picture transformation, but without falling into this shame narrative or also this like defensiveness that can be such an obstacle to doing good growth work? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I'm very glad this has been something that probably happened later on since I
Mm-hmm.
started
Yeah.
doing my work of just noticing, I don't know if this is helpful all the time to say, do the work, do the work. My I think my opinion on this is a lot of the times we rush to heal the breakup,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, no, not even sometimes, most of the time, we need to learn how to survive the
Yeah.
breakup before we grow through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just know for me, when you're in the thick of a breakup, you cannot think clearly. You're
Right.
not thinking objectively.
Yeah.
And most of the time, your negativity spotlight's going to be on you, whether or not you. I was just talking to someone on one of my episodes
Mm-hmm.
about the shame that comes with being broken up with. Even though we
Right.
didn't do anything wrong, it just still feels so shameful that someone didn't want to be with us.
Right.
I think in the beginning, and maybe and for some people it might be longer, I think healthy distractions, surrounding yourself with people, doing whatever you have to do within reason, obviously, not to be destructive, but you just have to learn how to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you start thinking clearly, then you can start really taking a look at stuff. But I
Yeah.
don't think it's productive to do it in the beginning because you're not all you're going to do is see all your quote unquote faults, which probably aren't even faults.
That is such good advice. And like to just to give yourself grace and understand that this is a process and that particularly earlier stages, like to don't feel like you have to force yourself into some sort of growth or healing or achieve some nirvana. Oh, I have everything all figured out now. It's goal number one is literally just to survive and get
Yeah.
through this like emotional crisis. Because, and I'll just say this as a psychologist, it is pretty much impossible to do meaningful, deep, profound growth work when you are in the kind of emotional crisis that happens in the period of time right after a breakup. And so to have any expectation of yourself that like that's what should be happening is going to not just make you feel bad because when you can't do it, but I think it also sets you up for failure long
Yeah.
term. And so I love what you're saying is just be really compassionate with yourself and give yourself time and let it go for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had a big insight working with my therapist.
Yep.
This was 2018,
Mm-hmm.
working with my therapist doing EMDR therapy. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember I wanted to just jump into the trauma right away. And she said, we don't do EMDR until the
Right.
trauma level out of 10 feels under a 5. She
Yeah.
said, I will not work with you on something that feels like an 8, a 9, or a 10 because it's too big.
Yeah.
We have
It
to
will.
wait until it calms down and it gets a little bit more manageable before we
Mm-hmm.
can do any meaningful work on it. And that was very insightful for me to realize, hey, when something's at a 10, we're just going to try to survive and get by, and then
Mm-hmm.
with time on its own, it'll go down and there will be a time where it feels clear and I feel like I can have more insights
Mm-hmm.
into what's going on.
Yeah. I love it. Fantastic reminder. If it feels like too much, it probably is. That like trust yourself. This first chapter of our conversation has been so helpful. In the next chapter, I know that you and I want to talk about a specific question that a lot of people have, which is, but how long is this going to take? I think to your point, because that like the early stages, that like just suffering and emotional intensity is so profound. And so I hope that you stay with us as we move into this next chapter. Click on the next video to hear Kendra's thoughts about how long it really takes to get over a breakup.